The crystal glasses clinked against fine china as Sarah Thompson, my sister, hosted another one of her elite family dinners. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, watching my brother-in-law Marcus, the self-proclaimed business genius, hold court with his usual audience of admirers. At 42, he wore his CEO status like a crown, each word dripping with the kind of confidence that only came from never having faced real failure. And that's how I closed the Anderson merger, he concluded, basking in the appreciative murmurs from our gathered family. Biggest deal of the quarter. Some people just understand business at a different level. His eyes flickered to me, lips curling into what my sister probably thought was a charming smile. I took another sip of wine, already knowing what was coming. These monthly family dinners had become Marcus's favorite stage for his particular brand of subtle cruelty. Speaking of business, he turned fully towards me now. Claire, how's that little, what do you call it, consulting thing of yours? It's going well, I replied evenly, noting how my sister Sarah straightened in her chair, eager for the show to begin. At 38, I learned that the best defense against Marcus's barbs was calm dignity. Still working from home, right? He chuckled, swirling his expensive bourbon. You know, when Sarah told me her sister was in business too, I expected something more professional. How can anyone take you seriously without even a proper office? My mother shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Dad suddenly found his roasted vegetables fascinating. They'd long ago chosen their side in the family dynamic, and it wasn't mine. My clients seem satisfied, I said, spearing a piece of perfectly cooked salmon. Marcus had insisted on catering from the city's most expensive restaurant, another chance to display his wealth. Clients? Marcus barked out of a laugh. Is that what we're calling the local coffee shops and boutiques now? You know, Claire, if you ever want real business advice. Actually, a deep voice cut through the dining room. Our client list is quite impressive. All heads turned to Richard Anderson. Yes, that Anderson, of the merger Marcus had just been bragging about. He'd been quietly observing from the other end of the table, where Marcus had seated him as the guest of honor. In fact, Anderson continued, setting down his fork, my daughter's company has been trying to get on her waiting list for months. Claire's firm is rather selective about who they take on. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. I could hear Sarah's sharp intake of breath, see Marcus's face transition from confidence to confusion. Your daughter's company, Marcus managed, his voice suddenly less certain. Megan Anderson, CEO of Horizon Tech. Richard smiled warmly in my direction. Claire's firm handled the Matthews Group acquisition last year. Brilliant strategy, by the way. When Megan told me who was behind it, I could hardly believe someone so young had orchestrated such a complex deal. But then, real talent doesn't need corner offices to prove itself, does it? I watched the color drain from Marcus's face as realization dawned. The Matthews acquisition had been the talk of the business world, a $400 million deal that had transformed the tech landscape, and I'd orchestrated it from my home office, the one he'd been mocking moments before. I had no idea, Marcus stammered, his earlier bravado evaporating. Obviously, I replied softly, allowing myself a small smile. More wine, anyone? Sarah's hand shook as she gripped her glass, her perfect hostess composure cracking. Our mother's mouth had fallen open slightly, and Dad was now staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. Claire, Marcus started, his tone shifting to something almost ingratiating. Why did you ever mention that I handle major corporate acquisitions, that my little consulting thing advises Fortune 500 companies? I set down my wine glass carefully. You never asked, Marcus. You were too busy telling everyone how successful you are. Richard Anderson chuckled. And speaking of success, Claire, I hope you'll consider taking Horizon Tech on as a client. Megan's been quite persistent about wanting to work with you. Of course, Marcus jumped in. Anything for family. I'm sure Claire would be happy to. I'm afraid my schedule is quite full, I interrupted smoothly. But Mr. Anderson, please tell Megan to have her team send over the proposal. I'll review it personally. Marcus's face flushed red. The Anderson merger he'd been bragging about minutes ago, his biggest deal of the quarter, was worth less than half of what I handled for Matthews. And now his direct line to Richard Anderson was watching me with obvious respect while barely acknowledging Marcus's presence. Claire, Sarah found her voice, though it trembled slightly, Why didn't you tell us? All these years. Tell you what, Sarah. That while you and Marcus were mocking my little business, I was building one of the most respected consulting firms in the industry. That the home office you love to ridicule has closed deals worth billions? I dabbed my lips with the linen napkin. Would you have believed me? Or would you have just found new ways to diminish my success? The truth hung heavy in the air. They wouldn't have believed me. They'd been too invested in their narrative of Marcus as the family's business genius and me as the struggling younger sister who couldn't quite measure up. But your clothes. Sarah gestured weakly at my simple black dress. Your car, you live in that small house. Because I don't need to prove anything to anyone, I replied. Success speaks for itself. It doesn't need designer labels or luxury cars to be real. Richard Anderson nodded approvingly. That's precisely why your reputation in the industry is so sterling, Claire. No flash, all substance. The exact opposite of. His eyes flickered to Marcus briefly. Certain other approaches. Marcus's hand tightened around his bourbon glass. His carefully cultivated image of business brilliance was crumbling, and with it his standing in the family. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Mr. Anderson, I turned to Richard, ignoring Marcus's attempts to catch my eye. I'd love to hear more about Horizon Tech's expansion plans. Perhaps over dinner next week. I know a wonderful little place. The new French restaurant on Fifth. Marcus interjected desperately. I'm a member there. I cold. Actually, I smiled. I own it. One of my small side investments. Nothing like running a major corporation, of course, but it turns a nice profit. The restaurant Marcus had been trying to get a membership to for months. The one he bragged about finally getting into. He'd never known that every time he dined there, he'd been in my establishment. Sarah's wine glass slipped from her fingers, staining the pristine tablecloth red. But for once she didn't rush to clean it up. She was too busy staring at me, really seeing me for the first time in years. The thing about success, I continued, standing up from the table, is that it doesn't need an audience to be real. While you were all focused on Marcus's latest promotion or Sarah's country club membership, I was building something lasting, something real. I reached for my simple leather handbag, not designer, but handmade by an artisan I'd helped start their business. Thank you for dinner, Sarah. Mr. Anderson, I'll have my office contact you about that dinner next week. As I walked toward the door, I heard Marcus's strained voice. Claire, wait, perhaps we should discuss. Discuss what? I turned back briefly. How you spent years mocking my business? How you treated me like a failure because I didn't brag about my success? Or maybe how you're suddenly interested in my little consulting thing now that you know who my clients are. The silence was deafening. Sarah had sunk back in her chair, her perfect dinner party in ruins. Our parents were looking anywhere but at me. And Marcus looked like a man watching his carefully constructed world crumble. Send me the dinner bill, Sarah, I called over my shoulder. I know how Marcus hates to spend money on family charity cases. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click, leaving them to digest not just their expensive catered meal, but the realization that they'd spent years underestimating exactly the wrong person. And this was just the beginning, because what they didn't know, what Marcus was about to find out, was that his company's upcoming merger, the one he'd been counting on to secure his position as CEO, was about to face an unexpected complication. One that had everything to do with the sister-in-law he dismissed for so long. The morning after the dinner party, my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages from Sarah, voicemails from Marcus, even emails from my parents, all suddenly desperate to clear up any misunderstandings. I smiled, remembering Marcus's face when Richard Anderson had revealed who I really was. But I wasn't interested in their belated attempts at reconciliation. I had a merger to stop. You see, what Marcus didn't know, what he'd been too arrogant to investigate, was that his company's upcoming merger wasn't just another deal. It was a carefully orchestrated plan, one I'd been developing for months. Claire, my assistant's voice came through the intercom of my home office. Yes, the same one Marcus had mocked. Mr. Anderson is on line 1. I picked up the phone, settling into my ergonomic chair. My little home office might not have impressed Marcus, but its technology rivaled any corporate headquarters. Richard, good morning. Claire, his warm voice filled the line. I must say, dinner last night was enlightening. Your brother-in-law seems to be having quite the morning. He's been trying to reach me since dawn. I could imagine. Marcus's entire career hinged on this merger, the one he thought would cement his position as CEO, the one he'd been bragging about at every family gathering for months. Has he figured it out yet? I asked, pulling up the merger documents on my triple monitors. Not yet, Richard chuckled, though he might want to take a closer look at who's been quietly buying shares in his company over the past 6 months. Ah yes, the investment firm that had been accumulating a significant stake in Marcus's company, the one operating through a series of shell companies, the one that through a complex web of corporations belonged to me. Claire. Sarah's name flashed on my phone again. I declined the call. Your sister seems persistent, Richard observed. They all are, now that they know. I signed off on another document, watching as my ownership percentage ticked up another fraction. Amazing how success changes people's perspective. The next few days were a symphony of panic from Marcus's corner. He finally started digging into the merger details, probably hoping to impress me with his business acumen. Instead, he discovered something terrifying. His company was being systematically purchased by an unknown entity. You have to help me. He cornered me outside my favorite coffee shop, not coincidentally, one of my first consulting clients. Claire, whatever bad blood there is between us, this is my career we're talking about. I took a sip of my artisanal latte. Funny, I thought it was just a little coffee shop last month when you mocked me for helping them expand. I was wrong, okay. He ran his hands through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up in a way Sarah would have hated. I was arrogant and stupid, but please, if this merger falls through, then what, Marcus? You'll have to work your way up like everyone else. Start something from scratch, build a business without writing on your family name. His face paled. We both knew he'd never built anything himself. His CEO position had come through connections, not competence. The same connections he used to belittle me at every opportunity. My phone buzzed again. A notification from my legal team. Another block of shares acquired. We were getting close. The board meeting is next week, Marcus said desperately. They're expecting me to present the merger details. But this unknown buyer, if they gain controlling interest, then you'd be answerable to them. I finished for him. Imagine that. The great Marcus Thompson having to justify his business decisions to someone else. The realization dawned in his eyes slowly. Claire, the buyer, it's not. My phone buzzed again. A text from Richard Anderson. Megan's team just sent over the Horizon Tech proposal. Impressive plans. Shame about Marcus's company. They would have made a good partner if their leadership was different. I showed Marcus the text, watched as the last pieces clicked into place. You're going to destroy everything I've built, he whispered. No, Marcus. I'm going to show you what real business looks like. I stood up, smoothing my simple but immaculately tailored dress. The board meeting is at 2 p.m. next Thursday, correct? Don't worry about preparing anything. I'll be handling the presentation. The week that followed was chaos. Sarah showed up at my house twice, begging me to reconsider. He's family, she pleaded, as if she hadn't spent years treating me like an embarrassment. My parents tried next. Think about what this will do to the family name. Dad argued. The same family name that hadn't stopped them from laughing at Marcus's jokes about my cute little business. But the real satisfaction came at the board meeting. I walked into the room Marcus had dominated for so long, taking my seat at the head of the table. The other board members, old men who'd never questioned Marcus's leadership, stared in confusion. Gentlemen, I began, as Marcus slumped in his chair. I represent Quantum Ventures, the investment firm that now holds a controlling interest in this company. We've reviewed the proposed merger extensively, and we have some concerns about the current leadership strategy. For the next hour, I methodically laid out every mistake Marcus had made, every rushed decision, every missed opportunity, every instance where he'd chosen flash over substance. The board members' expressions shifted from confusion to concern to outright alarm. Therefore, I concluded, our first act as majority shareholder will be to recommend new leadership. Someone who understands that real business success isn't about corner offices or country club memberships. It's about solid strategy, careful planning, and actual results. Marcus stood up, his face red. You can't do this. I built this company. Did you? I pulled out a folder. Because our analysis shows that company value has actually decreased under your leadership. The only thing keeping your position secure was this merger, a merger that as of this morning is no longer happening. The board erupted in chaos. Marcus tried to speak, but his voice was drowned out by angry shareholders demanding explanations. I sat quietly, watching years of his carefully constructed facade crumble. Oh, and Marcus, I added as he headed for the door, his career in shambles. You might want to start looking for a new country club membership. The one you have is about to be discontinued. The aftermath was everything I'd planned for. Marcus was forced to resign, his reputation in tatters. Sarah's social circle, the one she used to mock my simple lifestyle, suddenly discovered that the sister they dismissed was now controlling one of the city's largest companies. My parents called a family meeting, probably hoping to salvage something from the wreckage. I attended out of curiosity. You've made your point, Mom said, her voice trembling. Surely we can fix this as a family. I looked around the table. Marcus, without his designer suit and corporate swagger. Sarah, her perfect image tarnished by association. My parents finally forced to acknowledge that their golden couple wasn't so golden after all. Fix what? I asked calmly. I simply did business. Isn't that what Marcus always wanted? For me to understand real business. But it's destroyed him, Sarah protested. His career, his reputation. No, I corrected her. His arrogance destroyed him. His need to diminish others to feel important. I just showed everyone what was already there. I stood up, gathering my things. The company will do better under new leadership. The shareholders will be happier, and Marcus, well, I hear there's good money in running a home-based business. If you can handle working without a proper office, that is. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. 5 years later, the company had doubled in value under new leadership. I'd merged it with Horizon Tech, creating one of the largest tech consultancies in the country. Marcus had tried starting his own firm, but without his corporate title and family connections, he discovered that business success required more than a corner office and an expensive suit. Sarah still hosted family dinners, though they were considerably less grand now. Sometimes, when I attended, I'd catch Marcus staring at my simple clothes and modest lifestyle with new understanding. He finally learned what I'd known all along: real success doesn't need to announce itself. The small home office where I built my empire remained unchanged, but now, on its wall, hung a framed photo from that last board meeting. Marcus's face, as he realized that the sister-in-law he dismissed had orchestrated his downfall, was a masterpiece of karmic justice. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't just success. It's success they never saw coming. As for me, I still prefer working from home, still drive my reliable car, still live in my comfortable but modest house. But now, when Marcus passes me in his much-reduced circumstances, he understands a fundamental truth. True power isn't in what you show, it's in what you know. And I'd known, all along, exactly what I was building.